How to completely and safely remove the dual boot of Ubuntu from your Windows 10 installation without any data loss on a UEFI BIOS. Hey peeps, what's up? Munchie here, back with another video, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can safely uninstall Ubuntu from your Windows 10 dual boot setup if you have a UEFI BIOS. Now all the relevant links are linked in the description of this video, and if the first step of changing the boot order in your BIOS does not work for you, or you do not see that option, move over to the next step of deleting the partition and then removing the entry using diskpart. Of course, for the first step you do need to know the function key which will boot you into your BIOS. There is a website linked in the description of the video which has a list for the different manufacturers out there, and also make sure that you have disabled fast reboot or fast restart in your Windows, otherwise you might have issues booting into the BIOS. The first thing which we are going to do is you can go into start here and left click and then go ahead and restart your computer. Of course, you need to know the function key which will boot you into your BIOS setup, and for me it is F1. I do have a list in the description of this video showing the function keys for different manufacturers, and again for me it is F1 and entering setup. This is going to take me to my BIOS setup. Now this is how my BIOS looks like. For you it might be a different UI based on your manufacturer. Herein I will go into startup. Again, the option might be different for you, but you have to look for the boot section. So if I press the enter key, because boot was highlighted, so let me go back. Here it is. I am in startup and boot is in white, which means it is highlighted. And then if I press the enter key, you will notice the boot priority order has first place as Ubuntu and second one is Windows Boot Manager. Now this Ubuntu is the Linux distro which is installed on my computer, and this is your GNU grub loader. What you need to do is move this down. Once you move this down and Windows Boot Manager is the first option, you will not get the GNU loader and your device will boot directly into Windows. So again, the options of moving these options around might be different for you. For me it is like I highlight Windows Boot Manager by using the arrow keys, and then I can press the plus key to move it up. So I will do Shift plus, and there it is. You can see that Windows Boot Manager is now the first option. Next thing I need to do is save and exit. So for me, again, you can see on the bottom right it says F10 is to save and exit, and again the function key might be different for you. I will press F10 and now it wants a confirmation that save the configuration changes and exit. I will press the enter key to confirm yes, and now when my laptop restarts, I will not get the GNU grub loader. It will directly boot into Windows. There it is, and that is because we moved Ubuntu one level down, and this is the first step towards completely removing Ubuntu with a dual boot setup on your Windows machine without any issues. For the next steps, we can move over to the computer directly. So here we are on the computer, and if I tap on this search icon and herein if I type in system information, you will notice that my BIOS mode of course is UEFI. Next up, I will right click on the start option on the bottom left of the screen, and herein I will go into disk management. Now you will notice that I do have a healthy partition, and as you can see, this here is my Linux partition which has Ubuntu installed, and this here is the swap partition which I had created. So the next steps towards removing Ubuntu or your Linux distro completely from your dual boot Windows 10 UEFI setup is to delete these partitions. Again, if you did not create the swap partition, you won't have it, and if you created an additional home partition, you would actually have 3 partitions for Linux or Ubuntu. Again, how do you know that these are Linux or Ubuntu? For starters, they are greater than 1 GB, and then they do not have any drive later assigned to them. let us go ahead and right click on the first one, which is your swap, and say delete volume, and here and confirm and say yes. This is going to delete the swap partition for us, and there it is now moved over to unallocated. Now once this is changed over to unallocated, we are going to do the same thing with the other partition. Again, this is our Linux partition. This is the root one around 80 GB, and we are going to say delete volume over here as well, and then say yes. So as you can see, it now combined them into one partition of 97.66 GB unallocated. If you had created a home partition, delete that as well, and eventually all three of them will combine into one single unallocated partition. Next thing we need to do is we need to expand our C drive or the primary partition. So we're going to right click on C, and we are going to say extend volume, tap on next, and herein nothing to do, just select next and then say finish, and bam, there it is. The unallocated space has now moved over to C drive, and my C drive is back to 237.33 GB. I can also go into my drive, and this PC, here it is, local drive C is now back to 237 GB. Next thing you need to do is we need to open command prompt as administrator. So again, search over here, type over here command, and command prompt will show up. Then you can right click and say run as administrator, or you can use the option over here as well, whichever one you are comfortable with. So we do have command prompt open, but let us go back into disk management to check a few things. So for starters, this is the disk where we had our Ubuntu installed, and this here is disk 0, right? And then the EFI partition is the one in which we are interested in. So this here is partition 3. So those are two things which you need to remember. The disk is 0, and the partition which we need to modify next is the EFI partition, which in our case is partition 3. So disk 0 partition 3. Keep that in mind for your device. It might be different, but for me it is disk 0 partition 3. So here we are back on the command prompt, and do note we executed this as administrator. By default it is in C drive Windows System 32. The first command which you need to enter over here is diskpart, and once you've entered the command, press the enter key. So as you can see, we are in diskpart now. Next thing we need to list is the disks. So the command for that is list space disk, list space disk, press the enter key. Now remember, I told you to note down the disk where you had Ubuntu installed. For us it was disk 0, and the partition was 3. So you can see we have only two disks, 0 and 1. In case you have multiple, that is where that would be helpful. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to select this disk, but before that, if you notice that GPT here is star, which means we are on the correct disk. That is another verification for us. So the command to select a disk is as easy as select space disk and then the number, in our case 0, and then press the enter key. It is saying disk 0 is now selected. And another way to verify is if you do a list space disk now, you will notice the star beside disk 0. This means that disk 0 is now selected. Next thing we need to do is we need to list the volumes inside this disk, and the command for that is list space partition. So list space partition, press the enter key, and as you can see, those are the 4 partitions, and number 1 is primary, number 2 is primary, number 3 is system, and this is 100 MB, and this was our EFI partition. Remember, we had memorized or noted down that we were on disk 0 partition 3. So this partition 3 is our EFI partition, and this is the one which we need to modify and remove the entry for Ubuntu. So selecting a partition is as easy as select space partition and then the number. So there it is, select space partition space the number, in our case 3. For you it might be different, and then we are going to press the enter key, and again partition 3 is now selected. And if you do list partition now, So list partition, press the enter key. You will notice the star besides the partition 3, which means this partition is now selected. That is another way of confirming that. Next thing we need to do is we need to assign an alphabet to this selected partition so that we can modify it. And the important thing over here is to make sure that the alphabet is not already taken. The command is as easy as assign and then space letter is equal to whatever letter you want to assign it to in caps. So we are going to go with X because that is the last one, and hopefully that is not assigned for you. For me, I definitely know it is not assigned because I have only C drive, and then press the enter key. So now as you can see, disk part successfully assigned the drive letter or mount point. At this point we need to exit disk part. So the command for that is exit. All you need to type in is exit and then press the enter key. So now we have exited disk part, and now we need to go to that specific letter again, as easy as typing in X colon, press the enter key, and as you can see we are now in X. Let us now type dir space /p, press the enter key, and again you can see we have a directory called EFI. Next up we need to go into this EFI, so cd space EFI in caps and then press the enter key. We are now in EFI. Let us now press dir space /p and press the enter key, and again you can see we now have something called Ubuntu, right? And this might be different for you based on the Linux distro you have installed. For me it is Ubuntu. And now all you need to do is remove this. So you're going to do rd space the name, whatever the name is for you. In my case it is Ubuntu space /s. That is it. rd space name, in this case Ubuntu space /s, and then press the enter key. It is asking us, are you sure? Again confirm it by pressing Y, and bam, there it is done. And now if you do a dir space /p and press the enter key, you will notice that the Ubuntu option has now been deleted successfully. And there it is, as easy as that. At this point you can close the command prompt, reboot your computer. You should not have any issues, and do not worry about the partition or the EFI which we mounted, because once you reboot your computer things will be back to normal and it will be unmounted. In short, you will have no X drive. And there it is, peeps. That is how you uninstall Ubuntu completely without any data loss from a dual boot Windows system with UEFI BIOS. And that will do it for this video. Hope my video helped you. Likes, shares and subscribes are appreciated. Feedback and comment more than welcome. See you when I see you.